Hello and welcome to another episode of Leaders of Transformation. We're going to have some fun today. We've got a really cool guest with us here, Keith Hawkins. And I met Aaron, so shout out to Christopher Worth from No Quit Living podcast. Awesome guy. And he introduced me to Aaron and had some fun. Actually, I was on Aaron's show. Now we're going to have the opportunity to turn the tables and have him on my show. And he's just got a really great story and a passion. So Aaron, welcome. We're excited to have you here in the Leaders of Transformation.
Thank you, Nicole. It's always fun talking to you, regardless of what we're doing. This is awesome. Thanks for having me on the show. And definitely thanks to Chris for connecting us, because it's been, a compounding effect of good things and keep meeting good people through each other. So this has been fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were having such a good chat. I was like, we need to start this recording. We're laughing. We're talking about all the things that were going on. So that's one of the coolest things about podcasting, and particularly even being a host, but also even as a guest, is that you get to meet the most amazing people. And I would say that's one of the greatest blessings out of it. Yeah. Not just the opportunity to share and to encourage, empower people, but that is, just the connections and where it goes from there is just fantastic. So, yeah.
Definitely. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. And for the listeners, I know it's a lot of fun because you get to meet, people. Like you get to meet me because I'm on Nicole's podcast, and maybe you'll look at my show, and it's just this constant stacking of good people. Like even before us podcasting, I kept meeting great people because I kept listening to like my favorite shows, and I learned so much from so many amazing people. I definitely agree with you there. It's a lot of fun to meet people like this.
Yeah. And you talk about our listeners, and definitely we want to welcome our listeners here and viewers, as we're also doing on video now, getting more into video for the Leaders Transformation podcast. Woohoo! We get to see the love poster behind Aaron, which I just love. I think that is that is awesome. I need one of those for myself. But
I get a lot of comments on that. Thank you. It's really, really cool. So those of you that are listening, you're like, and you're not seeing us, you're thinking, what are we talking about? He's got this beautiful black and white behind him with love strewn over it. And it's a picture of him and his wife. So beautiful. And kids. Yeah. And Sophia.
Daughter. Yeah. Sophia.
Our little one.
Yep. Yeah, awesome. So very cool. So let me give you a little bit of background on Aaron. So Aaron is he's actually got 22 years of leadership experience as a public servant. He is currently a police captain serving in the New Jersey community that he lives in as a law enforcement executive. His education includes a graduate degree in leadership from the University of Oklahoma, and with an emphasis on professional coaching. And he's also alumni to the invitation-only FBI National Academy. And he's going to tell us a little bit about his story and his brush with mortality and how that changed his life, transformed the way he viewed his relationship, his life, his work. And now he's on a mission to help other people. He's got a podcast called Unbreakable Success. And it's a really great podcast, very inspiring, lots of great guests on there. So I highly encourage you to check that out. And we're just really excited to have him here. And again, as you, the listener and the viewer, we're really excited to have you here because this is the reason why we do the show. And we joke about, we get to meet great people, but it's putting that encouragement out to you, because I do believe, and I know Aaron, you believe the same way, is that everyone has the ability to be great. They have this ability to make an impact in the world. And, what we want to do is we want to encourage you in that and change the balance, change the, all that negative news that's out there and all these bad things that are happening in the world. If you just listen to that, you start to think that that's all that's going on. In reality, there's so many amazing things that are happening in the world right now, and people that are stepping up and using their strengths and their passion and their expertise to be able to encourage people to solve world issues, major problems, and also issues on the local level, and supporting people. And so that's what we want to showcase on the Leaders of Transformation. So for those of you that are listening, make sure that you follow us on social media. We're always sharing. Sometimes I come across things and really neat stories of what's happening around the world, what people are doing, and I just reshare them on the Leaders of Transformation page. So I encourage you to go check that out. Of course, we're on Twitter and Instagram as well, and we do it there as well. And go to leadersoftransformation.com afterwards, because there's some really great resources for you as you're launching your initiative and or taking it to the next level. So we encourage you to do that and join the community, get involved and tell us what you're up to. We really appreciate it. So, but coming back to Aaron, your podcast is called Unbreakable Success.
Yeah.
You also have an online course that is called that. And that's becoming the theme of everything that you're focusing on. So how did you come up with that name?
Yeah, that's a great question. And thank you again for having me and starting off with that. Unbreakable Success is a term I came up with. It's funny, when I started podcasting, and I really fell in love with it, the original name of my show was Best Life of Your Life. I'd been into personal development since like 2009 is when that started. And we'll get into that story later. But I wound up doing a bunch of episodes. I was meeting great people, and then I stopped. Life took over. School was going on. The job was going on. And I wound up taking like about a 4-month break. And before I started up again, I was talking to a friend of mine out in California, Amy Schuber, actually, of Inspired Conversations podcast. If you never met her, you got to meet Amy. She's great. But I told her, I said, you know what? I think I need to rebrand the show because I have I had a different perspective about things, and I wanted something that really spoke to internally what I was looking to accomplish for the listeners. And the term unbreakable success kept coming up because my feeling is this, and the realization I had was this. Most of us, everybody listening, you, Nicole, me, we start off on our journeys, our individual journeys, whether it's to build a business, to start a family, to rise the corporate ladder, to be a newly acquired CEO, and you want to be a great leader in your organization. We all start out with these best intentions. What happens is a bunch of things start getting in the way. Like the first day is great, everybody's shaking your hand, or the first few dates are wonderful and everything's going great. You're learning about everyone and everything's like bright and shiny and new. But eventually things start to hit the fan. The problems come up, the issues come up, the disagreements come up, the challenges, the struggles, the fears, the lack of influence that you're able to have. All these things start getting in the way. And what I've realized is the people that I keep meeting that are really doing amazing work, people like you, Nicole, a lot of the guests that you've had on the show, guests I've had on my show, people that I've coached and things of that nature, the people that are really crushing it and doing well, they've learned to prepare for those things ahead of time.
Yeah.
So they're prepared for what we do. What do we do when influence is failing? They actually proactively learn how to deal with fears and how to deal with emotions, and proactively how to deal with all these struggles that are going to come up, and how do you do goal attainment? When we prepare ahead of time for the struggles we're inevitably going to face, then nothing can stop you, because as long as you're prepping the whole time, when that trouble comes up, you start feeling those fears, for example, because everybody's got fears about stuff that they're doing. When those fears come up, if you've been learning and practicing how to deal with them, well, that just becomes routine. Like, yes, you're going to feel the emotion, but you know that you can process it. You can slow down, you can process, you can think, what is it that I'm really afraid of? What's the worst thing that could happen in this scenario? And what is this fear really from? And what can I do instead? What action can I take to get my mind and my emotion and my body away from that fear? When you're planning ahead of time, those things become almost trivial a lot of times. And that was the gist of Unbreakable Success, is helping people to prep for the problems before they get there. And that's why when I do my interviews on my own show, much like you do, I want people's story. I mean, I want the dirt out there, for lack of a better word, because meeting these amazing people and learning the struggles that they've been through, and how they've gotten over it and how they've gotten through it. When we share those things, everybody's tool belt gets bigger. You start learning, like, I remember that conversation with Nicole, and she was talking about how she went through something like this. So now that I'm going through it, you have a reference to go to and deal with the issue. So it doesn't stop you in your tracks. It doesn't knock you off the rails. It's just part of life. And you're not only ready for it, you were expecting it in the first place because you knew trouble was going to come. So,
yeah, and that brings up a great point, because sometimes people expect the bad things to happen and then they just attract more of it. That's not what you're talking
yeah.
about here. Is just
Mhm.
knowing that life is not perfect. I mean, I've
Yeah.
had clients that have said to me, have you ever experienced anybody that's gone through this like me? And what they're actually saying
Yeah.
is, and yes, I have, but the thing is what
Sure.
they're actually asking is not that. What they're saying is, am I the only one that's going
Yeah.
through this?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you realize that everybody is going through stuff, like even this one particular client I was talking to recently, and I said, look, you look at your challenges and what you're going through right now, and you're comparing it to the highlight reels of other
Somebody
people.
else. Yeah.
And you're saying, wow, they're just, they're doing so well. How come I didn't do those things? Or how come I'm
Yeah.
not further ahead, or whatever? I've had these other challenges that have slowed me down in my business, and, frustrated about that. And yet the reality is those people have challenges. You just may not see them. Everybody has them. And if we think that life is just going to be perfect and smooth and everything's going to cruise, we are going to be, sorely disappointed
Yeah.
in the process,
Definitely.
because that's where we grow. And
Yes.
it's interesting. It's this paradigm shift, right? Which is like, it's not a bad thing that these life experiences happen. It's what the meaning we give it, and
Yes.
what we learn from it.
Yeah.
But that's how we grow. You don't go to the gym and do light weights and make an impact, right? You've got to tear the muscle so that it can rebuild and rebuild. And it's the same thing with us. And so I love that. And that's of course why you and Chris resonate so well. His no quit living philosophy, your unbreakable success. There is a strength about that, that you can get through anything. I look at it like, for transformation, for me, it's like, how do we transform something? How do we change the way people see themselves, the way they see the world around them, the way they see others? Why? So that, yes, they can be strong, so they can be, able to take on more and more pressure as time goes on. So I love that. Now, you do have your own transformation story, and probably several, I'm sure. But tell us about, you talked about 2009 being a pivotal point in your life. So tell us a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, sure. I'd love to jump into that. I want to touch on what we were talking about just a second ago. When it comes to, you reminded me when you were talking about these challenges that we're facing, and a lot of us, in many ways, we're doing the same thing. We're trying to prepare people to deal with these challenges. It reminded me of this, one of my favorite, probably one of the most life-changing quotes. And there's not many quotes that I say actually that I can really grasp and say, I changed because I heard this or read this. And it was from Tony Robbins, when he said, people's biggest problems isn't that they have problems, it's that they think they're not supposed to have any.
Oh, that's good.
And it was one of those things I think I listened to it on one of his years ago, one of his CDs, one of my first experiences in personal development at all. I had to play it back like 4 times because it just never dawned on me. But it's so true. Our issue isn't that we have issues. Our issue is that we think we're not supposed to have them. So when the problems come, there's the complaining, there's the comparing. It's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I have this problem in front of me.
Something's wrong with me. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's why it's so important to have coaches like you, Nicole, or me, or have these shows so that we can prep people for those things. As far as me, back in 2009, this moment I had was at the time I was 30. I'm just going to age myself. I was 36 in 2009. I had been, like you mentioned, I'd been a police officer since 1995. So I had a bunch of years on the job. I think I was a young sergeant at the time. I think I'd recently been promoted for the first time, finally. And I came home from work and I had a little bit of an annoying day, but nothing over the top. But I went to bed, and at like 1:30 in the morning, I woke up with this massive, massive chest pain. And I remember I was laying on my side and I was looking at the dark wall in front of me, and I was kind of groaning out of my sleep with my hand on my chest. And I'm like thinking, what in the world is going on? I mean, on a scale of 1 to 10, the pain was about a 12, and it was on its way up. And the pain was radiating down my arm, and I was having a hard time breathing. And I sat myself up, and I did what seemed like the only smart thing to do at the time, was to get up and try to walk it off. and just shake it away. And at the time, I'd also been cross-trained as a emergency medical technician. So I've been kind of prepped to self-diagnose in these situations, which was kind of terrifying because I realized my symptoms were indicative of a heart attack. And like I said, I was only 36. So I'm thinking, like, there's no way this can be that. I'm relatively I'm still a kid. I'm healthy. I'm still relatively young. I worked out all the time. And so it just didn't make sense. And finally, I kind of cut through that clutter of chatter that was going on in my head, and I realized two things. Number one, my wife was still sleeping in bed next to me. And number two, our 3-year-old daughter was down the hall sleeping in her room. And if I was wrong, and if I actually was having a heart attack, I realized that if I checked out right then and there, they were going to find me in the morning. Mm. And that visual terrified me. So I woke up my wife, and I said the craziest words I probably ever said in my life was, "Babe, you've got to call 911. I think I'm having a heart attack." And she startled out of bed, and I love her because she's so calm when stuff like that just goes sideways. She's like poised and ready. And she said, "Are you sure?" And I waited another beat, and it felt like how I describe it is it felt like I had a big dial on my back that said energy, and somebody was turning that dial down, and all my energy was just falling out of my body. And I said, "Yeah, you've got to call." So I collapsed on the floor, wound up collapsing on the floor right there at the foot of the bed, and was taken to the hospital. Stayed there for about 2.5 days. They were running all kinds of tests for stroke and for heart attack, because when the ambulance came, they said half of my face had that facial droop, which is indicative of a stroke. Fortunately, turns out they definitely ruled out a heart attack. They couldn't determine whether or not I had a stroke, but the good news is I had no residual symptoms, so I'm good to go these days. Even ran a half marathon afterwards, and I'm doing very well. The funny thing about that situation is that when it was happening, and as I was sitting there at the foot of the bed, slumped over, I couldn't move, I couldn't speak. I could hear, but I could hear only all the sounds were muffled. It was like I was underwater. And the weird thing that I realized is that I wasn't scared of dying. I didn't feel fear in that moment. What I felt was this overwhelming wall of regret. Like, as I was sitting there immobile, I got hit with this, like it was like a Mack truck of regret just hit me. And at the time, for anybody that doesn't know me, I was and still might consider myself to be a good guy, at a stable job, wonderful wife. We've been married 22 years now. Our daughter was 3. She's healthy, beautiful. Everything was good. Like, there were no glaring issues to speak of. And that was the interesting thing, because when I felt this regret, it was almost like I was arguing with myself, because I'm like, wait, why do I feel like I kind of have been, not doing something completely right? And it was like in a big wave, I felt like there was this vacuum behind me, this empty space of opportunities that I had failed to take advantage of. Like, I started challenging myself with these realizations that you could have been a better father, could have been a better husband, better friend to your peers, could have been better at your career. You could have impacted more people. I realized that I had so much more to give. You mentioned earlier that everybody has this greatness within them. Everybody's capable of greatness. And that was the earliest stage of me realizing this pattern of what happens to people, that I like to look at it as we all are by default have this greatness, this capacity to do these amazing things. And I don't think I wrote this quote years ago, and it was that, I want to make sure I remember it right. I don't think that the world is full of average people with a few amazing exceptions. The world is full of amazing people who've been convinced that they're supposed to be average.
Yes. And
that's what hit me in that moment, that things were good, and I was okay with being good, and I was okay with being, the sergeant with the good blue-collar job, and I was doing all the right stuff. But I was not pushing myself. I wasn't trying to be anything more than what was expected based on how I was raised, my class, because the reality was I was doing way better than I thought I deserved to be doing. Like, as a kid, there were times in our house where there was no power because we didn't have any money. And there were some empty Christmases with no presents and that kind of thing, I don't say it as a sob story, but I say it as it kind of framed how I felt about what I was capable of, what class I was in, and, what the ceiling was for me. So having grown up and gotten this really great career, working with amazing people, working with friends that I had from childhood, having this amazing wife and family, and everything was good. For me at the time before this incident, if someone would have told me that I should have been demanding more of myself, I would have told them they were nuts, because I was too grateful. Like, I should be grateful for what I have and not be this greedy guy who's demanding like to be more. Like, who the heck am I to do that stuff? But that was a reality check. When I realized that, or at least I thought that I was checking out, and I was intentionally keeping the brakes on is what I was really doing. I was intentionally trying to make sure I fit into my box. And the regret from that was way worse than the pain in my chest. And that was the beginning of my entire life just completely turning upside down in a good way.
So, yeah, there's so much in there when you think about how we take for granted our life. And then, like you said, well, I was super grateful, but I didn't think I deserved any more. And there's this ceiling. And I think we all have that, where we have this. That's why we don't have more, right? Yeah. That's why we don't do more than we have. Even people that are successful, there's always greater potential. I mean, we never, there's nobody that's ever, completely maximize their potential. And so, it's that, well, I should be grateful for what I have. And yet at the same time, what I also heard was, wow, I have so much more, not only in like even looking at what you do now, so much more that I can do and I can create in my life, and how much better, like a better father, better husband, better all these things. Mm-hmm. But it's also, I can give more than I have been giving up till now. Yeah. And, I remember, not as extreme in your case where it was, a night like that. But, having this moment where I realized that if I didn't make a change, I wasn't going to see my 35th birthday. Mm. And I remember the doctors kind of going, oh, well, it's kind of the way it is. And I'm like, I'm going to reach over and touch someone, but, and saying I'm here now and I'm looking for solutions now. And so but in that moment though, I had to choose and say, this is my life. This is what I choose. And I'm not going to take what somebody else says about my life. And that shifted. That was for me. That was a shift for me. And realizing that, there's more to life and what I can do. And so thankfully I've met, see my 35th and 45th birthday. I'm still here. But that's the same thing with you, is like you realize we all have those moments if we watch, if we listen, and if we're paying attention to those moments where it's like life gives us that opportunity to go, hey, life is short. It's like Gary Vee. I was listening to him the other day and he said, you know what? Your life is short. One day you're going to be dead and it's going to be over. Like live your life now. Yeah, he doesn't mince words, right? It's like, you're going to live your life now, right? And there was a few expletives in there, which I'll leave out, but, in Gary Vee style. But no, but that's the thing, is to realize that. And then now today, where you're actually teaching, encouraging people and saying, how do you expect those things, not like wanting those things, but understanding that. But there's also, let's talk about this idea of deserving. Like what shifted for you in terms of expanding your possibility of what you deserve? How did you work through that? Because I think that's a really, talk about it being a ceiling. It's not just a glass ceiling. It can be like, concrete, many inches thick for people in terms of getting past that.
Yeah, it was one of those things where I didn't realize it was a ceiling. Like to me, to use an analogy, you might think that, the ceiling was there because I put it there, but I kind of painted it with clouds and a pretty blue sky and a sun in it. So I'm like, oh, look, there's the sky, and I don't go up there unless I'm flying to Disney or something like that. So I would love to say that after that event that I just blaze this trail of glory, but I didn't at all. It was messy. The one immediate decision for me was to go back to school. And I think like that event was in December of 2009, and I was enrolled in class by January 2010. Like I immediately was like, okay, I'm going to stop. This is one thing I'm not going to put off any longer. So I went back to school, finished my undergrad, and like you mentioned earlier, finished my graduate degree in Oklahoma. And that was just something personal for me, and almost like I think out of something I kind of did internally for my father and for my family, just one of those things that I wanted to get done for myself. But that wasn't a big thing. For me, what was different was I knew I needed some new perspective, but I had no clue what perspective I was looking for. I was raised in a Christian home, so I'd spent my life since birth being in church every Sunday. So I wasn't looking for some kind of faith-related thing. I just wanted some other perspective to give me an idea of what I should be, like, how do I live more than I was living? I'd never touched a personal development book in my life at that point. And the only name I knew, of course, was Tony Robbins, the crazy guy from the infomercials. And he'd probably punch me in the face if he heard me say that, because I know he can't stand being referred to as an infomercial guy anymore. But it was true. It was the only, make your life better guy I knew. So I went to the internets and I typed Tony Robbins scam because I had this hesitancy. So I kind of wanted to look him up, but I also wanted to make sure I didn't get like scammed into some weird kind of nonsense. And like, give me a break. I was a cop for so many years, since 95. So of course I was skeptical. But what wound up happening was I wound up buying his Unleash the Power Within CDs and listening to it. That was the beginning of me kind of cracking through that ceiling of what I'm actually capable of in comparison to what I'd been doing. And it was painful to listen to, because for anyone that has listened to Tony over the years, and I'm not like, I don't bow at his feet. I don't even agree with everything he says and does, but there was so much of what he said that was so common sense and so undeniably true for me, just about my thought process and what I believed my limitations were. It was life altering. So I was hooked at that point, not necessarily on him, but I was hooked to the idea of there's more out here. And there's reasons that some people have come from nothing and created something. And there are reasons that there are people who have come from with every resource imaginable and are literally in the gutter at this point. Yeah. So I knew there were some things that were happening consistently that were causing these things to happen. And I became hyper obsessed. I started reading any and everything I could get my hands on about personal development, motivational theories, personal performance, all that kind of stuff. From Robin Sharma to Brendon Burchard's, and of course the Tonys and the Zig Ziglars and the Les Browns. And I just started consuming all this content. And what happened for me was it started changing my life. It started changing my marriage. And I decided that as time went by, I decided that I wanted to open a website. Like, I just wanted to have my own website because I wanted to start teaching this stuff that I was learning, because I was seeing changes. And you mentioned earlier, I'm a police captain now. At the time, I kind of put myself out there. I said I had finally gotten promoted before this event happened. It took me 13, 14 years to finally get promoted to sergeant. And what happened after that, when I started applying what I was learning and studying, like, I jumped from there to now I'm at the top of the food chain. Like, they can't promote me any higher. There's nothing else to get promoted to. And that happened over a span of 4 years. I went from sergeant now I'm the captain. So it was creating tangible benefits in my traditional career. It was creating tangible benefits at home. And don't get me wrong, it wasn't seamless. I was still tripping over myself and trying to create new habits. And the old habits were trying to hang on. But there were a lot of changes to make.
What was your wife thinking at the time? She's like, well, is this gonna end? Is he gonna go through this phase? Or, oh my gosh, this is really, this is the new Aaron. I mean, because some people go into that, right? They go into the personal development. We're talking about like from the beginning, right? Unbreakable success, realizing that there are going to be hiccups along the way. One of the hiccups often is in the relationships that we have, that if we decide that we want to grow and maybe they aren't at that position, or maybe they are supportive. I don't know what your situation is. That's why I'm curious. But like people have those different different reactions that they've got to deal with.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
I've seen that. I am the luckiest guy on the planet, where even prior to then, it's funny how you realize things in hindsight. Before this even happened, I always knew I wanted something else. I had started other businesses. I had a landscaping business years ago. I built my first website back in 1998. A modeling website. I'd gotten into acting, modeling. I was on Law and Order as an extra a few times. Like I was into other things. I was the oddball. Trust me, I was not the cookie cutter. Police work is my life. Love my career, love my people, but I always knew that there was something else I wanted to be doing. I didn't feel like, and I still don't. I didn't feel like my career was my identity. It was something I did. That was my career. I enjoyed doing it at the time. So I'd always been into new things. So the fact that I was into something new, for her, it was like, he's into something new again. But then it started changing my behavior sporadically. And she's my best friend. We're like teammates. So we bounce off each other. So whatever one of us is doing, the other one is there. We're by each other's side, supporting each other. And this whole growth mindset, it was obvious. And I think it was great that we had our daughter at the time too, that was growing, like as she was growing, because she was a toddler when this happened. She was only 3. And it just started affecting the way we interacted with each other, meaning the things I was learning and the concepts, the psychological concepts and the personal growth frameworks I was learning was helping us, and she became interested in it. And so when I said I wanted to build this website and start writing, it was like, cool, like do it, let me see what it looks like. And she was always there she's got a great eye. So visually she was trying to help me out and stuff. So it was bumpy and messy at first, but it's now to the point where we're kind of working together, because I retire next year from my law enforcement career. So this coaching and the keynote speaking and the podcasting is all stuff that it's just that will be our life, because we're working in it together now, her on the back end and me, out there as the personal brand. So it was to answer your question, how she responded, like she always does. She has always had my back. And I'm grateful, definitely grateful for it.
Well, and I think that's not a requirement, but it certainly helps. I think in creating success in your life, that you have a great partner. I mean, not everybody does. And sometimes, at some point, then if you don't have a supportive partner, something has to give at some point. But I think that's really awesome. It supports, right? You want to be around people. It's that, these are the relationships these are the people that you spend your life with, and, your daughter, your wife, and you want to have that support. Not everybody has it. But if you have it, it's certainly an advantage. Now you're writing, we could talk for hours, I know, but I do want to, you're writing a book called $1 Million Influence. Yeah. Just real quick. What is that about?
$1 Million Influence came from, I'll be totally clear about this. When a couple years ago, I created an online course, a personal development course, and it was about everything from what I called the 4 laws of success. Like I condensed my biggest lessons that helped my tangible success into 4 laws. And then I started. Which are, let's see, the acronym is PURE. The P is for pivotal choices, which is to be 100% responsible for every situation and circumstance you find yourself in. The U is for unconditionally high standards. To touch back on the Tony Robbins analogy, one of the first things that I heard from Tony is about, the quality of your life is equivalent to the quality of your standards. What I found is that most people will keep their standards just fine when everything's going fine, which is when it doesn't really matter. Like nobody's impressed by the man or woman who's nice to their partner when everything's fine.
Yeah.
what will change your life and what will determine the quality of your relationship is how you act when you're not happy, when things aren't right, when they didn't do what you wanted, when they said the wrong thing. Maintaining those standards unconditionally in those moments, that's what charts the course of things, because that's when people usually blow or make the wrong decision, they make the mistake. So unconditionally high standards is the key. The R is for reflective comparison, which is simply my way of saying, instead of comparing yourself to others, which we can go down a rabbit hole in that conversation of comparisons. Reflective comparison is my analogy of looking in the mirror and asking yourself, okay, in this moment, what would a flawless, if I were incapable of getting this wrong, incapable of ego, making a mistake, having a chip on my shoulder, if I couldn't get it wrong, what would I do right now? That's a question that has saved my butt in more ways that can count. Having, literally making it a habit to pause in those moments of decision and challenging yourself with that question. Because the great thing about questions is if you ask them, guess what you have to hear? Your brain has to respond with an answer. So by daring to ask that question, your brain will give you an answer. You may not like it, and your ego may not like it, but if you will ask that question, what would a flawless version of me do right now? You got to hear the answer, and that's up to you whether you want to listen to the right answer or not. And then the E is for elevating your situational methodology, which is just a fancy way of saying, when we're in a situation, we usually do one of four things. We either do what we're familiar with doing, like our routines, our habits. We hope, which can be great at times, but can also create its own box. If you're hoping when you could be taking action. We believe, which is also a good thing to do sometimes. But the last pillar, the tip of the spear, is to create. And there's not enough people creating. There's a lot of people doing their old habits and doing what's familiar. There's plenty of people hoping things will get better. I hope I win the lottery. I hope business gets better. Then there's even people that believe, which are the, I call them the Barnes and Nobles, like bookshelf dwellers that are reading all the self-help books, and they believe that everything can get better, but they're not creating anything with the things that they're learning. I always flip out when I see these advertisements on Facebook for these book clubs where read a book a week, read a book a day, read a book every day at lunchtime, and all these people are bragging about how many books they read. I'm not impressed by how many books somebody read. Tell me about one book you read and give me 3 things that you applied to your life.
Yes.
From that one book.
Yes. Amen.
That.
Oh my gosh.
And look, I'm a book nut. I buy way more books than I'll ever, right now, if I never bought another book, I'd never be able to read all the books I have.
Yeah.
But I read book, what I've been training myself to do is when I read a book, I don't want to let myself pick up another one until I've applied something from the book I just read. So I don't read as many books. I'm not reading a book a week, because how many new habits, you're not going to develop a new series of habits every single week.
Yeah.
Nobody is.
Yeah.
So, and it frustrates me because, and I'm not saying this to speak against books or even book clubs. I love sharing books with people, but if we're not creating, is my point. If we're not creating something from the things that we're looking to do, then that's where people miss the mark. So those are my 4 laws, which totally took us on a tangent.
Not at all. That was like gold right there. That's why I was in my spirit was like, we need to unpack that. Yeah. So thank you for that. That's awesome.
No, the original question was a book. So I created this online course. That whole thing was just a piece of this online course I created. I had modules on fears, on emotions, on emotional control, relationships, influence, goal attainment, habit change. So I had all these things in this course. And the problem was, what was frustrating me was I didn't feel like, even though I put the best of what I had into this thing, I felt like there needed to be a theme. I knew it was almost like I knew there was a theme there, but I had no clue what the theme was. It's, when you're in the bottle, you can't read the label, but it was my creation. So I had to take some time away from it. So I set this 8-hour monstrosity of a great training program that I built. I put it on the shelf and I came back to it a while later, and I realized that it was about influence. I started looking at rereading, because I had the whole thing transcribed like 65,000 words of content. And I started reading my own stuff for the first time. And I realized that what I was reading was pretty much a story about influence, about personal influence and about how to influence the people in your business and the people in your life. And right then, I'm not sure if I mentioned this to you a while ago, but right then I said, I got to write a book on influence. So I did in about a month. I wrote this book on influence. And the reason I titled it $1 Million Influence is I had been watching something on TV. I can't remember what it was, but somebody had mentioned the term $1 Million Smile. And they were like, doesn't she have, somebody was referring to somebody else saying, doesn't she have $1 million smile? And I had just been reading about this influence, and I had been agonizing about the title. Like, what am I going to call this book so that people understand it? I can quickly explain it. And boom, $1 Million Influence was born. I'm like, that's what it is. And I write it in the book. I said, when you see somebody with $1 million smile, you want more of it. It's irresistible. Like, you always want to be around that person that when they smile, the whole world lights up. Well, it's the same way with influence. Like, when you're around somebody who's just amazingly influential, you see the way they treat people, you see the way they treat their coworkers, their peers, their bosses, their subordinates, their family, and you see how positive it is. You just want to be around that person. And whatever they're selling, you want to buy because you know they're genuine. And whatever it is you can do to help them, you want to, because you see them give so much. That's really the crux of the book. The book is about influence, but it's not about manipulating people into doing what you want. It's about influencing people in the most positive way by learning how to give. And that's really what the book is about. So it touches on a lot of, it's the first third of the book. It's pretty much three main parts. First part of the book is about human psychology and what people need, like the human needs type of deal, like what you need to understand about human beings and what triggers them to be fulfilled, what triggers them to feel empty, what triggers their defenses, what makes them feel good. That's sort of the foundation. Then the middle third of the book is about influence itself, both some of the biggest mistakes about influence and then some of the mandates of influence. And then the book ends with a big section on relationships, personal and professional relationships, and how to build really strong relationships, like life-changing, game-changing, as I call it, relationships, in 7 main pillars. And we dive into that. So that's what the book is about. And it was the easiest thing I ever wrote. It really is. It was so...
Is it out yet?
It just come back from the editor. I'm actually just waiting for the final cover, and it'll be out. By the time this airs, it's going to be out. So I'll be giving it away. I'll be giving it away. People can get a free PDF copy if they want it, no charge at all. And then I'll be giving away the book just for like a shipping and handling fee for anybody that wants it.
We'll make sure there's a link there. Yeah, we'll make sure there's a link in the show notes, and then I'm sure it'll be on your website as well.
Yeah,
that's awesome. And I love, influence. I love what you said there. It's not about manipulating people. It's about having true power and influence. Is it's compelling. It's genuine. It's authentic. It's positive. Like you said, it's uplifting.
It is.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
more of that.
Yeah, influence at its core is really about affecting the character or behavior of something or someone.
Yes.
And that's what that's the Oxford Dictionary definition is about, impacting somebody's character and their behavior. And that's a powerful responsibility. Influence isn't like, okay, how do you trick somebody into paying you, $500 for something that took you 10 minutes to create? Influence is about, what can I offer to someone that can change their character, change their behavior, which in turn will change their life.
Yeah,
that's worth spending money on. If you're a coach or if you're a trainer, whatever your job is, it's not about giving in the sense of just giving everything you have away, never charging money for anything, and that's so noble. No, not at all. But it's about, honestly, whatever you're doing, whatever your jam is, whatever you love to do, and whatever your career is, doing it in a way, first and foremost, that is actually going to get somebody a real result. In whether either in their character or their behavior, something that's going to positively impact them. And then you can market it and sell it. And people are happy to spend money on quality stuff. I spend more money than I should on stuff all the time, but I enjoy it. And it's stuff that actually has an impact on me. So yeah, But yeah, I'm excited to get it out there. You get the signed copy, of course. I'll make sure you get one.
Thank you,
Nicole.
I can't wait. That's gonna be a great book, and we'll definitely we'll promote that. Make sure that everybody gets access to that. That is awesome.
Appreciate it.
Speaking of results and making things happen, so your website is aaronkeithhawkins.com, and you've got an online course. You got your book. You're starting to do some events going on as well.
Yeah.
So some really cool stuff.
A lot going
happening.
on.
What's in the near future for you?
Near future for me, a month from now, I'm doing my first live event, and it's going. I'm actually next week. I'm really going to start pushing the promotions for it. It's local. It's right here in Jersey. An intimate event aimed at mission-driven entrepreneurs that have a sense of like, I'm doing this because, there's something that I want to do to impact the world and my customers, my clients. So it could be anybody from nutritionists, fitness coaches, life coaches, relationship coaches, doesn't matter. But the reason I'm doing this live event is simply this. In the entrepreneurial world, what I keep seeing is that people are getting some really great information about how to build their landing pages and their sales funnels, and how to do webinars, and how to do live events, how to get speaking gigs, how to do all this stuff. And there's a lot of tactical, strategic training that's out there. And I'm very specifically making sure I'm not saying that in a negative way. I'm saying it because there's some great stuff that you can learn for free as a business owner. And a lot of it's geared towards newer business owners that are learning how to get their message out there. And that stuff is very much needed. The frustrations that I keep seeing as I speak with clients and as I speak with people that are in my world and in my circles is that they're learning all these things and they're getting all the systems in place. But at the end of the day, if you don't know how to influence anyone, if you don't know how to connect strongly with those people that you're looking to serve, the systems don't matter. Like, you can have the perfect lead page and you can have it go to this perfectly organized email sequence that's leading to your course that's hosted on Kajabi and it looks beautiful. But if you don't know how to connect with anyone and show them and let them know that you care about them a heck of a lot more than you care about your business or how much money you're going to get off of them, when they know they're the focus, that changes the game. Like, if I'm going to when I spend money on a coach or a program, I got to be convinced that person really loves what they're doing and they love the results that they can get for people. And so I'm spending a whole day teaching people largely about the content from my book, about influence, about human connection, and how to understand, what people need to feel and what people want to feel when they engage with you in a business context, how to influence people and how to build real human relationships that will allow you to build those connections that will help you build your business and have people that aren't just a customer that was kind of weaseled into something. They're actual fans because they know you really care about them. And that's what the day is going to be about. I'm excited because I know if somebody's going to go to something like that, they're my kind of people. So I'm like, I'm going to meet so many people that I know I'm going to love to be around, and they're going to get to meet a whole bunch of other people that are just like them. And you of all people know how amazing things can get when you collaborate with the right people. So I'm excited to be doing that.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. If I was nearby, I'd love to come out and see you in action.
This is only the first one.
This is the first one. So we'll do, you'll be more.
Regardless of when this airs, this is definitely the first of many. It's not I'm not creating this as a one-off thing. This is something I'm going to do at least 3 to 4 times a year. So I kind of want to have this as a thing, because I know, and as people out there, especially that are business owners, it can be a lonely thing as an entrepreneur. So, and heck, even leaders, this is leaders of transformation. Even if you are in a leadership position in an organization with thousands of people, when you wind up at the top, I know you're not in a mix as much anymore. Yeah. So it can be difficult to feel like you're a part of something. So to have some collaboration and to be able to collaborate with people, it's so essential. And to all the leaders that are listening to this show, because I know there's some great ones out there, make sure you continue to really, what I found is I kind of climbed up the ladder in my traditional careers. I had to make it intentional if I was going to keep relationships going and keep the pulse on what's going on, because when you get up there in that lonely office and you're all by yourself, it's great. We all want to progress, but it's really important to build and maintain relationships. It's hugely important.
Well, and having people around you that continue to help you to stretch and to grow. And that's why actually I launched the Leaders of Transformation Mastermind, so that, the leaders have a place to go where they can connect and address their challenges and opportunities, celebrate wins, but they can be in that environment, because otherwise, you're so busy giving out. And I've gotten that experience, it's like, you're so busy giving out to others it's like, I forget who said it, who motivates the motivator, where do they go to get their inspiration? When I look at my coaches and I see, okay, who do I want to learn from? I'm looking at not just who they are, but who's around them, supporting them as they're continuing to grow. Because if they don't have if they're it, then that's a problem. I mean, they may be good now, but their learning curve is going to start to drop off, and their perspective, the influence that you talked about, is going to diminish very quickly, because because they're it's like they're either ripe, right? You're either growing or dying, right? So absolutely. So that's awesome. Aaron, thank you so much. Oh my gosh, there's so much that we could talk about. Leadership, what your experiences have been, even in the police force, in terms of leading in that arena. You got so many lessons.
You got to start doing 4-hour shows, Nicole.
4-hour show. Yes, exactly.
And that's, we can really get into it.
Deep dive into it. But you know what? If for those of our listeners, of course, so, if they're interested and they want to deep dive with you, then they can go to your website. They can get your book. Take advantage of your online courses, learn more about what you're doing there. And I'm sure we'll have you back again. We'll be doing some more, deeper dives into this. But, last, just a final thought for our emerging transformational leaders. What would you want them to take away from this conversation?
Absolutely. And most of them, if I can tell you anything, I just talked about this when I was just doing an interview, as I told you, with Kenyon Salo, a great speaker, a couple hours ago now. The most important thing I can tell the leaders that are listening to this is, whatever you're doing, do it with authenticity. And what I mean by that is, whatever your habits are in your workplace, your organization, and your business, don't have habits that you're engaging in just because it's the way somebody else did it, or the way somebody else told you should be doing it, or even if it's the way somebody told you in a book. Like, I'll be honest, I would love people to read my book because I know they're going to get something new out of it. What I don't want is somebody to do exactly what I say, exactly the way I said it. I want you to do it in a way that expresses you. So, and that's the way I look at everything I learn, no matter who I learn it from. There's books I love, and just pick out what feels best for you, what hits you at your core values, and express it. So leaders, a lot of times, and I've seen plenty of them, some great leaders, they feel like they need to be a certain way. And I think that's a big mistake, because as somebody who can remember being in both positions, both the person looking up to the leader for advice, one of the worst things, what I couldn't stand seeing was seeing a leader no longer act like themselves, because you knew them before they wound up in a position. Now that they're in a position, they're a completely different person. Now, granted, there's different responsibilities. I know that. Trust me, I have 30,000 people in my town looking to me to be the person making the right decisions. But it doesn't mean you have to change who you are as a person. If you lose your authenticity, you will lose your people. I promise you. So keep being yourself, and don't be afraid to be the person you are and express your values, what's important, both on and off the job. Continue to be a human being, because the more your people look to you and see you just being that good guy, that good gal, the person that they liked in the first place, or if they didn't know you, if they just see you being a real approachable human being, it makes it a whole lot easier to build rapport and make those connections you're going to need, because you need your people to be able to trust you and connect with you if you're going to be effective as a leader. So that's my advice. Great
advice. And I'm very adverse to pretension. or be
Yes.
people that are pretentious.
Yes. Oh, God.
I'm like, this is it. This is all. This is what you get.
Yeah. Yeah. So, T-shirt and some schoolboys. That's what you're getting.
Yeah. Some tats. I saw those tats. Those are awesome. And that is great advice. And with that, like you're talking about also building these books, your book, other material, all this material is designed to build leaders, not followers.
Yes.
A great leader is a leader of leaders. Yeah. And that's what you're talking about here. Granted, maybe some would like to, they're more focused on followers. That's not the type of book we're talking about. The ones that are saying, hey, here's how I did it. And, and then go make your own path, and be the best you that you can possibly be. So that is great advice and a great reminder, because sometimes we know that, but when we get into that leadership role, or maybe as a new leader, it's like, well, now I need to be a different way. And that's where you you lose the connection from it. So very, very powerful.
I'm not going to pretend it's easy at all. Like there's times where you got to, I have to balance, my responsibility to my organization. And then, then I also have friendships and people I care about. But trust me, you can do them both. Yeah. You can do them both. I promise you. Yeah. So I'm open for anybody, like you mentioned earlier, anybody who wants to reach out to me. If you go to my website, if you look on the top left of the screen, I got a number there. You can just text me, literally. So I make it really easy to get a hold of me. I'm not real formal. I don't make you fill out 50 questions before you ask me something. Just shoot me a text.
I love it. Aaron, thank you so very much. Appreciate you being here.
Anytime.
And thank you to our listeners. We appreciate you being here, and I hope that something that Aaron said will inspire you to be a better leader, to, be authentic, that pure, the acronym, brilliant, is to go through that and unpack that for yourself. One of the things you said was take action. It's not about how many books you read, or that you're reading. It's about how you're taking action. And I do believe that, transformation happens when, we shift our mindset. We may shift the way we see things, but it ultimately has to translate into action. And so whatever it is, whatever that nugget is that you got from today's conversation with Aaron, just take action today, not next week, next month. One day I'm going to go back and listen to that and do that. No, today, because it's forefront of your mind, and just one step at a time. That's how you create that success. So I encourage you to do that. We'd love to hear your story. Go on theleadersoftransformation.com. Send us a message. Tell us what you're doing. Go on social media. Share with us what you're up to. We also have a Facebook group for those of you that are actively, creating transformation in the world. You're a leader of transformation already. You want to connect with other difference makers, world changers. We have a Facebook group that you can hook into. And I would say it's a really elite group of people that are seriously out to play. They are on the playing field, making things happen and supporting each other along the way. So I'd encourage you to join us if that's you. And we'll look forward to seeing you on another episode real soon here. Until then, have a great day and be awesome.